Don't hurry. Oh, wait. Santa Claus, come quick. Look.
Come on over here. Hurry up. Hurry.
It's Lee Major.
Look, it don't matter a hill of beans what happens to me. The world couldn't afford it if anything happened to you. Now you stay put.
7 o'clock. Psycho sees Santa's workshop.
Eat this.
And only Lee Majors can stop them. The night the reindeer died.
Folks, another throwback movie for Christmas. Let's do Scrooge. My gosh, I cannot believe it's been so long. 1988. It's like 35 years. It's like, it's painful. Yeah, it's nuts. I have this guy with me. Mephisto's in the house. All of his connections are in the description there, so make sure you are checking him out. So about a guy who's like myself, Mephisto. You, my brother. First off, thanks for doing this. Appreciate you, man. You like to do the positive movies, man. You talk about some of the good stuff, which is kind of like not in our circle very much anymore, man. Like, yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's, you know what? I was gonna say I'm carving my own niche here for being in a sort of fellowship sphere and not bashing through all the bad stuff. Don't worry, it'll come someday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not that I decided to go into the more positive route. It's the fact that for the longest time I was all over the place with my channel, and I kind of decided, well, I don't really like the name Mephisto's Movie Reviews, which is the name of the channel. I would like to call it just Mephisto, but it won't hit. Plus, it's not even written correctly. It's not even like it's written phonetically rather than being the real thing. And I decided, well, you know what? What I'll do is I'll just concentrate on just doing movie reviews. Started with like I decided, okay, October, I'm gonna do a special project. I'm gonna do every single day a review, just to sort of get it on the training wheels and getting it through every single day. And after that, I'm just going to focus on, you know what, the stuff I like. I thought about like the top 20 movies that I like, but then I just went off on tangents with movies that like, oh, I suddenly want to watch this movie, so I'll just watch this movie. So I'm going back and forth with like older stuff and more newer stuff. So like as a contrast, Indiana Jones and Sisu, which is like totally different things.
Listen,
and totally different times.
I am totally with you because this is so the throwback stuff I'd been doing. I mean, like 10 years ago, it's like I did radio bit stuff like this where I would just throw in, like, instead of just doing like the generic movie reviews, I would also mention, hey, by the way, it's also the 30th anniversary of whatever, and Fathom Events is doing a special screening. So make sure you can put that on your radar screen if you're as big of a fan as I am. And it worked well. So it was in, it seems like forever ago because it was in October of 2022 or September. We were I'm in Florida. Hurricane was here. We were stuck for 4 or 5 days, and we'd watched a whole bunch of movies together. My wife and I had watched like 8 movies or something like that. And I said, I feel like I'm doing a lot of work, but I'm actually, there's nothing. She says, well, why don't you just do videos on them? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Who wants to watch a video about whatever it was? And she said, nah, you do your throwback thing or whatever. And I just kind of, okay, sure. And then I was at work, and everybody's like, how you doing? What have you guys been doing? And I started mentioning some of these movies that we're talking about. I'll never forget the look on her face when I told this coworker, Towering Inferno, and she had never even heard of it. And I was kind of like, my mind was blown. Like, okay, hold on. Before there were blockbusters, there was Tower Inferno. Like, I don't understand how you've never heard of it. Like, if you haven't seen it, I'm like, okay, your world's just, you're younger, and I'm like, okay, this throwback thing kind of needs to happen. And then, yes, it's been sort of like that back and forth, like yourself. What am I watching, and have I ever done a video or commented on it? And So for Christmas, that's what I do. I just kind of theme it the same way I would have done before. Like I try to focus more on Christmas movies. I'll still throw in some other stuff, but like yourself, my stuff will, yeah, I'll be talking about some of the newer movies or some of the newer shows or whatever. But then there'll be some random video on whatever I'm watching or doing. So it's awesome, my friend.
And that's the whole issue. It's the fact that YouTube is such an unforgiving animal. I call it an animal because it's so wild and crazy sometimes, and everybody's trying to ride that dragon, that algorithm dragon. So I thought, well, I've been doing this for quite a bit. I did have I still have another channel. It used to be monetized. Now suddenly YouTube decided it's reused content, so it got demonetized. I don't really care because I don't post there any much. But I've been doing this since mid 2015, 2016. And it suddenly dawned on me, just concentrate on that one thing and just do that one thing. And I used to do like volume, where I have to post something at least like 4 times a week or at least once a day or something like that, to have something, to get going.
Sure.
And then I thought, well, to be fair, just concentrate on that one thing, the one thing that you love. Whether or not it'll take, it doesn't really matter, because if you do something that you like, it won't feel like too much of a hassle. And to me, I'm a very lazy person. It doesn't look that way, but I am a very lazy person. So I work in bursts. I can work for a couple of hours, and I can like do 5, 6 of these scripts and just hammer them in, and then rest a little bit, and then just hammer in like
There you
2
go.
videos. Like, it's a lot of editing, not because it's like super crazy. I don't do crazy edits anymore, but making sure a movie fits with the copyright system that YouTube has, it's a little bit of a tricky, it's a tricky beast.
Yeah.
But making sure that what I want to say is there. If it's a movie I want to recommend, I just say I recommend it. I can give a number or a star or that
Sure.
sort of a system, and maybe that will be in the future. But at the moment, it's like, I recommend this, or I don't recommend this, or I recommend this for, I don't know, for Christmas or for Halloween.
So when I threw out some thoughts, I know we were connecting back and forth about doing something, and I threw Scrooged out there because obviously it's an anniversary year. It's something I hadn't really touched on yet. It was on I had a list of 3 or 4 things that were kind of like in the to-do list. This is one of those movies I watch every year. I usually watch it multiple times. Mrs. Pops is not a massive fan of it. She's sort of like, it's like it's kind of mean for me. Like she's more on the critic side of this, that watch it and are like sort of like off put by the meanness, how mean they go with Frank Cross, and I'm like, yeah, but I enjoy the humor and all that more than she does. But with that said, I still get a laugh, but in large part because it's nostalgic for me. Because I remember seeing it in the theater, loving it then, and loving it now. What is your thought on Scrooged, and how does it kind of fit into the grand scheme of these type of movies for you?
Well, to be honest, I'm from Israel. I'm Jewish. So I don't necessarily celebrate Christmas. However, my upbringing was consistent of me staying. I was a latchkey kid in the 80s. And I do have a sibling, a brother of mine, but he at the time was very young. We're like 6 years apart. So when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, he was very, very young. And I did watch cartoons, but he didn't watch it with me. When I watched cartoons, I used to watch it with my dad. So, and when I watched like movies, I used to watch them by myself. It used to be a ritual where my parents brought this like a stack full of VHSs, and there's like 1 or 2 cartoons, mainly Warner Brothers cartoons. So Roger Rabbit, and that's not Roger Rabbit, Bugs Bunny.
Looney Tune stuff, yeah.
Looney Tune stuff rather than Disney stuff.
Right.
And the rest is like movies for adults and there was no supervision. But
It was a free for all, man.
I didn't see.
VCR free for all era is what that was.
Yeah, I didn't see any porn or anything. But I did watch adult themed movies. But it started with, oh, here's something that you might be interested in, Star Wars. Here's something that you might be interested in, Star Trek. Here's like Black Hole, if people know this. But yeah, it's sort of like went through a sci-fi phase and then through a fantasy phase and then through like crime phase, which is, either buddy cop movies or just a detective movie. It's sort of, it was everything from everything.
Mm-hmm.
That was my upbringing. So getting to know the American Christmas feel, the holiday feel, is something that I learned from that. So I learned about the
It
holiday.
was like
I knew
another
what-
genre, basically.
Yeah, it's a flavor, sort of a flavor thing to everything. Now, I have seen Scrooge much later in life. So when I was like maybe 11, 12, 13, I don't remember the exact year, but again, it's on VHS. Didn't see it in the theaters. I don't remember like when I was young, what happened. I watched a lot of the old Disney movies. When I say old, I mean Snow White, Cinderella, all those things were in the theater in reruns. And my aunt used to take me. So every couple of weeks, there was a new showing of a new thing. So I've seen all of those in the theater rather than a VHS. But when it came to like being older, so 11, 12, 13, that's where I either went with friends or I used to go with my mom. My parents split up at a certain point. So my mom used to take me to certain things. So she brought in Aliens on VHS, but she took me to watch Alien 3 in the theaters.
Okay.
Which was great and not so great at the same time.
Yeah. I got you.
But Scrooge, I have seen when I was a teen, and I already kind of I was smart or savvy enough to understand what Christmas is, and I kind of knew the whole Scrooge story from I think it was from Charlie Brown or from the Muppets.
Yeah, the Muppets have a great
I think it's from
Christmas
from the
Carol.
Muppets.
Yeah, the Michael
Yeah.
Caine-led Christmas Carol adaptation is actually one that this and that one are actually probably two of my favorite Christmas Carol adaptations. Like, those kind of, 'cause there's so many of those.
Yeah.
But those are two of the favorites that kind of get rewatched every year. So that's awesome.
But the thing for me is I'm a massive Ghostbusters fan, and
Yes.
I've seen Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, which Ghostbusters 2 came out 89, which is after this.
Mhm.
But I love the Bill Murray's sarcastic humor. And after seeing Scrooge, I got my mom to maybe rent other Bill Murray movies. That's how I saw Stripes, and I saw what's the other one? Meatballs. So I was like, I love this type of sarcastic humor when it fits with sort of that character. So Bill Murray's a great personification of a sarcastic person because let's face it, he's a bit of a can I swear a little bit?
We try to stick PG-13, but let's just be honest. He's
So
not particularly acting in a lot of
an-
this movie. Like, he's really just being Bill Murray, in fact. So, yeah.
he's in real life, he's a bit of an a-hole.
Yeah, an a-hole for
and
sure.
not pleasant to work with because he has a particular way of working. That's why him and Harold Ramis kind of had a big fight when they did Groundhog's Day, because he's that sort of a guy. Sort of like, I'll show up to your movie, and he shows up the day of with no notice. Sort of that way. And when it came to doing Scrooge, he literally personified that nasty executive that doesn't even care from anybody else.
Yeah, it's one of these stories, because I remember there's a similar story with Tim Allen and the Santa Claus script. Like, He knew he wanted to transition away from TV. He was looking for a vehicle, and he had found that script. And they went to the Disney executives. I think it was Katzenberg. And it's like, this is what Tim Allen. This would be the way to move him to stardom, that kind of thing. With Murray, it was like, well, after Ghostbusters, he was kind of on a hiatus. He had a bit part in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah.
But he really was like, okay, he's got to come back. You know what I mean? Post Ghostbusters, whatever. And actually, part of the marketing for this film had kind of shifted, where some of the posters, some of the marketing switches, and it's like Bill Murray from Ghostbusters is taking on three new, not just one ghost, but three ghosts. And there's, I don't know if you've ever seen like the foreign posters for this, but there's like some really strange marketing, like the Japan poster, I think, is the one where it's like, I don't know what's happening. Almost like a Highlander meets. It's strange, man. It's like there's some weird stuff happening with this this sort of like theme of this movie to other folks.
I don't remember seeing the Japanese poster, but I did see several posters of this from other countries, and each country has their own kind of shtick to it. But yeah, I understand. And the tagline, he's fighting three ghosts this time, is something I think it came up when we covered it on our show, because we covered it 2 years ago, I think. And I was kind of taken aback because my partner kind of brought it up. If I remember correctly, he brought it up. I was like, really? And then I went into it and I was like, oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah. So they have like the ghosts coming out with the Death's sort of belly and stuff, with the ghost here with the lightning coming out of his hand, and you're like, what is happening? It's like, it's so different than what we think of with Scrooge.
It has nothing to do with ghost busting, but it's a great marketing way of
it's like it's
it.
So anyway, I thought I'd share that. I knew that this had this even stranger than I may have to put that on the thumbnail, just because that's just such a strange interpretation of this. But so over the course of, because obviously you were like many of us, we're VHS kids, right? So through VHS, that era, you were just subjected to basically just decades of movies at random. Through no parenting or minimal parenting, we were allowed to get to stuff we probably shouldn't have been able to watch at a young age. And then we were consuming mass quantities of this. So I know this is how it was for me all the way through college. And I'd already been familiar with Scrooge and the Christmas Carol stories. So I kind of knew when this was coming out, like this kind of knew what to expect. But when you look at this movie, I know obviously it centers around Bill Murray and his character so much. I think right off the bat, one of the things that hooks for me is that opening sequence with the fake movie with the Lee Majors and taking down this stuff here in the beginning actually just kind of like gets you hooked on like, what am I watching? This is insane.
You know what's crazy? When I grew up, we didn't have any cable. We basically had like the one channel. But in the afternoons, we had Buck Rogers reruns, or was it evening? I don't remember exactly, but I knew who Lee Majors was because I knew he was Buck Rogers.
Well, he was,
and when he was like on screen, it was like, oh shit! I thought it was Bill Murray, and
right.
Suddenly Lee Majors, like Buck Rogers, is in this. And then you kind of understand, it's an intro.
Right. Well, Lee Majors was famous. So he's not Buck Rogers. That's a different guy. But he was $6 Million Man.
Oh, yeah.
That's what you mean. Yeah. $6 Million Man. Fall Guy was the big
wasn't he Buck Rogers too?
No, not at all. No, Buck
That's
Rogers
a different guy?
Yeah. Buck Rogers is a different guy. Yeah, Buck Rogers is Gil Gerard. And
that's right.
Yeah, Gil Gerard, by the way, turned into sadly, a horrible alcoholic. And I met the man, and I actually felt bad for him because at this point in his life, he looked so bad that most people weren't coming around him much. But I actually got to chat with him quite a bit. They were trying to work on like a Buck Rogers, sort of like a reboot and all that kind of stuff. But no, Lee Majors is more of like the studly guy post $6 Million Man. And there's a TV show called Fall Guy, and he was really, really big because of the Fall Guy thing, which I think they are trying to do something with. But yeah, this fake movie set thing here that happens in the very beginning was
Yeah.
just like such. I'm like, what is happening? The night the reindeer died is just
Yeah.
such a great hook. Like, I just love it. It's like him with this machine gun. The night the reindeer died.
Yeah.
And then you end up
And
with like a whole bunch of promos.
And that Vulcan machine gun was there. You know it was there because Predator did a Vulcan machine gun a year prior. It's like, oh, we need to put Lee Majors with one. We can't have just Jesse with one.
Yeah, doing a beat. They have like a Robert Guy. So it's funny how you see that he's like, he's this bitter, jaded, nasty TV executive. And I will admit, he kind of embodies a lot of what we thought about him. What's that?
He takes it out on the like the other producers there, the TV producers that are in the table.
Yeah.
He really hammers it home with them, and they're placating to him.
In his so I think everything about the IBC station and all these people and all that, the part of what works for the hook is we felt this way about how the executives were. Like everything about the executives, it all seemed very 80s money excess, do whatever it takes for shock value, the deterioration of entertainment on TV. All these elements had kind of been in our zeitgeist and things like that.
Puts them into the that whole twirling mustache villain type of executive.
Yeah. And Bobcat Goldthwait is sort of like this submissive, idealist there at the station. You know what I mean? Like he's the one that speaks up for questioning Frank, but of course he gets fired right away because of it.
Yeah.
I love this shot where they show the actual promo.
Yeah.
And it's so dark and edgy. Like the people are like shocked leaving the room. Get that shot. And then of course he's like, isn't that a little much? He's like, yeah, I hear you. Get him out of the company right away. Like the heartlessness of that. If you remember, like, I'm trying to look up the exact dates of when Wall Street came out, when the movie Wall Street came out.
And 1986.
So that was already in our lexicon of that sort of like greedy Wall Street 80s interpretation. So this coming out after that, this is all part of that caricature of what he wanted his character to be like. And because Murray is very integral in trying to make sure he massaged his character to be basically him. I mean, let's just be honest. He was playing this to be him. So
he was. Yeah, he tried to have a Scrooge version of Gordon Gekko, or Gordon Gekko as a TV executive, but he's very Bill Murray. He is definitely not Michael Douglas.
Right. Oh yeah, this is where they bring in
they bring in that the ringer, the guy who's even worse than him. They even sit down later at a lunch, and he figures out that oh no, he is me, but even more ruthless.
Yeah, because he tries to be your friend. Like he comes across as trying to be like the nice guy. He's like the consultant that everyone appears to like. It's a go get him kind of guy. And very much so. Yeah, John Glover's great in this role. It's a very underrated role for him because he goes on and, most people will know him from like Smallville or something like that. But this was fantastic.
He used to do a lot of these roles that are like bit parts in movies. He's very much one of those working character actors that you might see him in different movies, and every time he does sort of the same version of that actor or part in a movie, where he comes in, he may be the dad or the uncle or the vicious executive, or the vicious, I don't know, a part of a company or part of a city, that comes in and has that slick smile, and he's all bad inside. Sort of a same. I remember him as this kind of a role in various movies.
Sure. I think Gremlins was another one, right? He's in Gremlins 2. Gremlins 2, the sequel.
Yeah, he's in 2. Yeah, I think so.
Then the
Same
assistant.
sort of part, by the way.
Look at this shot, though. Like, you'd never be able to lay your hands on a black woman like that in today's cinema. Holy cow. Just the idea that this image even exists is just cancelable.
It's not even cancelable. I think even back then, if you put hands
No, it
on,
would be, it
on
was so
any woman,
inappropriate to do it. But it was like, it's even so much worse now that they would,
they would take it a step too far. This is bad enough, but they would take it that extra. Oh, he's also a racist.
Correct. Right. Yeah. The idea of doing this is so inappropriate. But yeah, it's so much worse now. Yeah. Then you kind of get this first phase of just how heartless he is. Like, this is the brother. Yeah. And, you know, the brother's very much into Christmas and some of the spirit of Christmas. And then he has to go to this dinner and it's all just nonsense. And he's given an award that he basically just gives away.
Yeah.
Look at him sneering. Oh, it's so Bill Murray.
It's Bill Murray in a nutshell. It's Bill Murray turning it up to like 12.
Yeah. There you go.
And then just taking another step too far sometimes.
Yeah, there are moments where it's even too far for that, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so this is Marley. Yeah.
This is it Bill Forsyth?
John. Yeah, John Forsyth comes back as his mentor. He's sort of like the Marley and Marley metaphor of the ghost, the mentor ghost that died of a heart attack. Yeah.
I love the fact that he's at a certain point he's drinking, but everything leaks over because he's supposed to be a corpse.
Yeah. That was done really well. This film, I think, got an Oscar nod for effects.
Really?
I think it had a nod. It lost to Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice won an award for that. I think it is. Hang on, let me get to the award parts. Hang on, let me pull up Beetlejuice. Pretty sure it's Beetlejuice. Yep, 61st Academy Award. There's like an effects award, and Beetlejuice won. Makeup, best makeup was Beetlejuice beating Scrooged. Yeah, I think some of this stuff. When you watch some of this stuff, folks, maybe you feel like it doesn't age well or things like that. But in the 80s, like this, using real prosthetics and real makeup, and there's an actual dude under there. There's not like, this isn't CGI'd. There's no green mask on this guy. So,
and to be absolutely fair, it looks way, way better. It looks gritty. It looks real. You can technically, what you can do is do a full mocap and just put it on him and let him act regularly. But the fact that he's acting through the mask makes it better because he needs to do the expression without having everything in your face move. So it's a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging, but it can create a better performance. Not all the time, but it can create a situation where you can bring your performance to that higher level. And this is not like an artsy, we're going for an Oscar movie. This is an entertainment-based movie. It literally tells a tale as old as time. Is it Dickens, right?
Yes.
So it's been told 100 different ways, and this is their version of telling the story for sheer entertainment. And it works really well because you believe that the guy is there because it felt tactile and real. And when he when he choke slams him, it feels like, oh my God, he's in trouble, but he's imagining it, right? It's all in his basically in his head.
Well, you need that
because
dark
it's a ghost.
You need that dark, almost scary, at the time, like creep show sort of element to it to be able to believe that Frank would be shocked by it, right? So Frank is the one who just did basically a horror commercial to promote Christmas. He could care less about other human beings. So you need a ghost that would be at least trying to get his attention, that would remotely be believable that it could have an effect on him. And then, of course, they go with almost like a kind of on the nose Caddyshack callback here with the golf ball, which is kind of fun. There's a ton of those, by the way. There's a ton of lines and innuendos that clearly Bill Murray had put in the script for Bill Murray. So Bill Murray fans get the gag or get the references. But yeah, this one's one of those that's a little more on the nose. But that's the warning ghost.
I mean, it was directed by Richard Donner, and Richard Donner has a way with actors. He will accept suggestions and sort of like go with the flow, and he does that in later movies where he goes for like if he's using the same actors, he's doing callbacks for other roles. Best thing that I can remember right now is he did original Lethal Weapon, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Or later ones, but let's say it's the first one, if I'm not mistaken. And then he did Maverick with Mel Gibson, but there's a moment there where he used Danny Glover as a robber, and as he leaves the place he robs, he says, "I'm too old for this." Right? And it's like, oh, it's Richard Donner, it's Mel Gibson,
call back to
Danny
his own
Glover.
stuff, the self-aware.
Put that in. Okay, I got, and it's a throwaway line for a throwaway character. It has no effect for the rest of the movie, but
that stuff
worked.
happens regularly now, right? I mean, The Rock can't do a movie without doing the eyebrow. Like it's not, it's part of the brand. Like it comes with the territory. So they were all dabbling with a lot of that. Richard Donner did direct like all 4 of the Lethal Weapon movies. Yeah, I didn't know he did all 4. I thought he gave it up after 1 or 2, but yeah, he did 4. He did all 4. He directed all 4. And we'll get to that end. I mean, hopefully we can give it a little credit. We'll just talk about it really quickly. At the end, when you have Frank Cross, he's come around to Christmas and he goes on this crazy wild rant, and he's like talking about and it seems like it's just kind of a hodgepodge of mess. It was a hodgepodge of mess. Bill Murray's just literally ad-libbing. He wasn't even following the cues. And when they yell cut or whatever, the writer that's there, Michael O'Donoghue, is like, what the heck is that? He thought Bill Murray was having a meltdown or a breakdown. Richard Donner kind of like hits him in the arm and goes, that was great. So Donner knew that, you know what, worst case scenario, if it didn't work out, he would just figure out how to wrangle Murray in and make him go back to the script and do another take. But he knew he caught basically Saturday Night Live. He caught the moment that this guy is able to deliver that most actors can't do.
Yeah, that special lightning in a bottle. And I'm be honest, I've never dove into a lot of these movies. Some of them I was like, oh, I love this movie, seen it 10 times, seen it 20 times.
Sure.
Didn't really dive into it. And then when you dive into the movie and you find out that a lot of these moments in the movies that you like, it's ingrained in your mind and you remember them the most. Those are the most free, the most ad-libbed, the most crazy, like in the moment things that just worked.
Yep.
And it was literally catching a lightning in a bottle. And you wait on these moments in every film and sort of like, oh, we're low on budget, so we'll do this and that, and it's gonna maybe kind of worked, and it ended up being the best scene in the entire movie. And
Hollywood's built on that, right? I mean, Jaws isn't Jaws if the shark worked, right? Yes. Indiana Jones shoots the swordsman instead of having a sword fight. Like, there's so many examples that we can give of this that's the case. So. So I know that was like at the end of the movie, but I thought it plays into what you were saying about Donner and Murray and just kind of that. Donner's very self-aware of how to make a good film. And he knew this was Bill Murray's sort of vanity project because it was his coming, because the last thing Bill Murray wanted to do was do a headline of another film post Ghostbusters and have it flop. He knew he had to be very careful. He wanted to rest. He wanted a little bit because, I mean, it is a lot. Let's face it. Murray did a lot of movies in that stint. So this was good. So anyway, so that's our first setup there, folks. Then we get the backstory, right, of all the other stuff, other characters.
And by the way, this movie did not flop at all.
No, this movie did well. What I'm saying is he could not afford to have a flop. No. This movie did exceedingly well. This movie was. '88. Yeah, I was in the theater. I worked the theater when this came out, so I worked for them, and I remember this being in the theaters for a while. This was a very solid film. I watched this movie a lot when I worked there.
And it had a good time. It had a good launch release date because it said November 23rd. That means it came out for probably Thanksgiving weekend at the
Yep.
time, or
Yep.
very close to it, and then it just stayed through Christmas, probably
Yeah, I'll
because
get it for you.
it earned $100 million on a $32 million budget. That means it stayed for a while in the theater. It's not like it hit like 80 million the first week and then it just tapered off. No, no, no. It just stayed. Plus, it
Yeah, so
probably had some competition back in the day.
so Thanksgiving 3-day weekend, it opened number one. Post Thanksgiving, it dropped to number two, but it was up against, the thing is, it's up against other feel good stuff. So it opened opposite Land Before Time. Oliver and Company was already in theaters. That's a Disney movie. So the kids stuff was already there. But other than that, it was Cocoon and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cocoon 2. The movie that opened that kind of bumped it is the Naked Gun. So Naked Gun comes out.
Yeah.
It had a nice solid run. Twins comes out, but what was happening during that time frame is all of these movies were getting traffic. They were solid. It wasn't like, yeah, it got $4 million in week 3 or 4, but that was a very solid number back then. $100 million was a very successful film, especially when the budget is only 32. So it 3x'd. And back then, again, the merchandising was like, what's the licensing for cable going to be? What's the VHS going to be? What
Yeah.
we could,
Secondary market was a major
Massive.
major
Yes.
part of the earnings past the box office where,
Yep.
where the real money from the movie is made. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all profit. You do it once, it's there forever, and that is where we're at now. Like this movie is forever going to make them money annually because of the holiday legacy that it's carved out. Like Paramount, whatever Paramount's doing with it, whoever's getting the money, moving the money around for licensing or otherwise, it's something that's always getting eyeballs. Re-releases, it's been re-released a couple times, so I'm assuming it's earned some more money there through some of those as well. I know that I was I think it was a couple days ago, I was watching a video where they're talking about this movie on its 30th anniversary. I think it landed, or maybe it was the 25th anniversary. It was in theaters, but every 5 years at least. So
Yeah, I mean, this movie, because it uses a sort of a I would say timeless story, but it's not really a timeless story. It's sort of the same story that you can tell in different ways and have a little bit of an angle each time. Where if you're using Muppets, it's in a whole different way because you have sort of the Muppets, their own kind of personality, and in Scrooge, you have sort of the Bill Murray personality intermixing with him being the Scrooge character. And by the way, this moment you can't really show past a certain point because
yeah, I know.
she
I know
has a
what's there.
see-through
I saw it go
thing.
by. I saw it go by a minute. You know
It's
what? I want to spin my wheels here for a quick second because you're hitting on something I didn't bring up. So I recorded a video with Vex Electronica about the Grinch, the 2018 Grinch. The Grinches are not as well received because they're basically still doing an adaptation of Dr. Seuss's tale.
yes.
And it can't touch the Chuck Jones. But I think with that animated movie, the 2018, they don't mean the Grinch. I think the movie works better if you think of the Grinch as like the curmudgeon anti-Christmas person that can walk in town or whatever, not the alien type beast that's the creature on the big mount. And with Scrooge, the reason these adaptations work is they're treating Scrooge or a Scrooge as this person, as this money grubbing, treats people terrible, visited by some ghosts, and is transformed into some sort of element of kindness. And that's why there's like dozens and dozens of adaptations, and many of them do work. I wonder if the Grinch would work like that if we saw like a live action Grinch where it was more like you are a Grinch, you're behaving like a Grinch, instead of it being like an adaptation. Like all of the elements of the Grinch story are interwoven in a live action like this, where it's not a dude in fur, he's just referred to as a type of Grinch. But in a very similar way, I could see that brand evolving because, you're right about this. There are so many versions of this story, and most of them work in some way, shape, or form because the story. Oh, I just did it. I did a Christmas Karen, mockingly. I know I get roped into these things, Mephisto. I will do the drudgeries. Somewhere between our friend Jay Harang and you, I kind of fluctuate a lot more. So yes, I did a Karen, a Christmas Karen, which I didn't know was a Christmas Carol. Duh, it seems so obvious now. But I was like, it wasn't the worst thing ever because there's a story arc. And I'm like, oh, well, of course there's a story arc. They're doing this story. So of course there's a story arc. But you and I both know so many movies today don't even have story arcs.
Yeah, but in the age of reboots, remakes, remasters, all that stuff, A Christmas Carol, the story itself, if you just do let's say we'll call it a modern version, but it's in 88 it was considered modern in the way that you pick an angle, but you keep the main elements clear. So
Sure.
you have the curmudgeon character, the evil character that has a redemption arc. So it's not a hero's journey, but it is a villain story from villainous to redemptionist. So understanding that the where I went wrong through the going through the past, present, and future, and understanding where your path started and where it will finish if you still go on that path.
Right.
And the curmudgeon or the villain kind of turning back and going to a more, let's say, a more positive, Christmassy, hopeful kind of way. So that's the elements that you have to tell. What you tell in the middle without those points is
A
open
lot
to
more flexible.
interpretation.
Yeah. A lot more flexibility.
And that actually makes not only the guy who plays Scrooge do something, it can do something different with it, but also the three ghosts.
Right.
Where in this movie you basically have just the two actors doing the ghosts, and the third one, the future one, being that crazy over the top puppeteer kind of
Yeah. Grim Reaper
almost
stereotype. Yeah.
almost horror like
Mhm.
monster that is
Yeah.
just a ghost.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, this is all. Yeah. Folks, let us know what you think about that. And what do you think about, my random Grinch thought? Because some of these moments are fleeting. And this is he meets the idealist, this old girlfriend, and it's like, we're going to try to staple, antlers on mice for the show and all the kind of little fun little gags that actually did work. So that's what it all kind of plays out. And then we get to, again, network executive having this conversation about everything and them trying to hijack his production. And then of course it moves a little quicker into he's starting to have like the illusions of hallucinations almost of this other ghost coming that was promised. And then of course you get into the craziness before we finally get our second ghost. So our second ghost is a fun one. I really always enjoyed.
The New York cabbie.
Yeah.
With the over exaggerated New York accent. I don't know if it's a Brooklyn accent or a Queens accent, some of it. And he is, by the way, both ghosts, both past and present, have their uniqueness, and you like them. You sympathize with them rather than with the Scrooge character, where in the past you get to see this, like I said, the start of the path, what brought Scrooge to be who he is. And it seems like when he's in the distant past, when he was a kid, they had somebody else to blame. But when he was with his girlfriend, there's no blame there. It's just maybe the ambition or something. But it seems like the when he was a kid affected him more in terms of going into the bad, rather than the sort of not distant, sort of the close past, where the ambition kind of started to take over.
Right. Yeah, I love the fact that, well, first of all, I love the fact that they include his brothers. His brothers are in this movie. So his brother plays his dad. And this is the party where the ambition is playing out. And he's sort of being blinded by, a career and overworking and missing out on opportunities and things like that. This is, of course, the girlfriend, Karen Allen. And then it kind of, he ultimately moving quickly through different paths of what his love really was. And then ultimately we end up back in our real time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what works is it felt, it also has to work. And so we keep building our script that Mephisto laid out for us. So the other piece I would tell our script writer is to make sure that the journey in the past has to make us believe this is our Scrooge of today. It's got to be pretty dark. It's got to be pretty crazy. That Christmas party where everyone's doing whatever. He needs to very, very much be obsessed with making some money. And maybe the love interest that he has cast aside has to be something like, you have to be an idiot to not want to have this person or be a part of this person's life, these kinds of things. And I think in Scrooged, those are all check marks, 100% they get right. And I think some of the adaptations might not quite get that quite right. But in here,
Yeah,
this
they
felt
sort of
perfect.
they sort of situated the girlfriend or the ex-girlfriend in a way where he is like the most capitalist or capitalistic pig, as they used to call it.
Mhm.
He's the most greedy, grubbing guy, and she is the most kind, nurturing, sort of takes care of others during a hard time, which is she's in a homeless shelter. She's taking care of the homeless shelter, doing a food drive or a food bank type of deal, where she tries to get him to get involved with this, but he's too much of him to let go.
Yeah, this is
And
the part. This is the part where that's revealed, right? Because he's trying to get the ex-girlfriend away to like go have lunch and blow all this off. Let's go do something for the day. And they're like, we have these problems, whatever. And he's like, you should fire these people, Claire. They can handle her, and he's like, these are volunteers. We're running a freaking food bank here. He's so out of touch with our world. And I love that about the Scrooge mythos. And I think because this adaptation, again, that 80s thing you said, right? That greed is good, Gordon Gekko era, the capitalistic pig type stereotypes, all that is ramped up to, like you said, that 12. And it all just worked perfect because it juxtaposed Claire, the idealist, and helping anyone being she's a kind heart to a fault. Like people will walk all over you is, I think, his line. It's just great. I do want to touch on one quick little trivia for those of you who don't think I give enough. I am not oblivious to the Can You Do Richard Burton references as a callback to a character sketch on SNL. Clearly, he put this on purpose so he could do this obnoxious, almost actually good Richard Burton type sequence here. So that was a Bill Murray ease.
it went over my head. The only thing I could see in this scene was it's the Fratelli mom from Goonies.
Yes, indeed it is. And it is indeed. So yeah, there's it's just one of those things where I know someone listen, bro, I everyone's got their people in chat and comments, and every now and I get that, you missed to mention this. You should have mentioned people. What if whatever. I got it. So
yeah.
All right, so that's what happens, and the next thing you know, we're back on set of the production with John Glover and did we get the Solid Gold dancers, or are they not much in that shot? Anyway, so by the way, the Solid Gold dancers, I don't know if you're even old enough to even know what I'm talking about, but they were such a big deal, especially as a kid, as a teen boy and stuff, because they were pretty scantily dressed.
I wasn't aware. Like when we did this for our show, back in whatever, I was surprised, or like rewatching this, I was like, oh, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
here now this movie.
Yeah, because that line about that, you can barely see those nipples there. That was an ad-lib line, like you were saying before, lightning in a bottle. That was an ad-lib line. That wasn't in the script, and it was like, that was a little bit. But you know what that was? That was
her nipples were showing, and quite vividly. I mean, she wasn't fully naked, but it was see-through, and I was like, in this movie? I don't remember this. When I was a kid, I was like, I maybe even I don't know if I thought about it. Probably did, but it kind of went by because I was concentrated on Bill Murray's character at the time because he was making jokes of it,
Yep.
which was more fun than the actual thing. It's like I
Yeah.
didn't pause it. But yeah.
Then we get to Ghost of Christmas Present.
Carol Kane is so good in this role where she's like, she is a vicious little devil, but she is so nice and her voice is so sweet. And she's dressed up in this sweet little pink outfit with these, like,
there's bubbles everywhere.
She's a pixie thing, but she kicks his ass.
She hit me with the toaster. Everyone always remembers the toaster, but you know how she grabs his lip? She actually injured him. They had to shut production down for a couple of days because she grabs his lip and she's jerking at him. She actually tore some of that soft tissue in his mouth, and they had to shut because he's in nearly every freaking scene. There's barely little that you could do if he was out of commission. So yeah, they had to shut production down for a couple of days while he kind of felt a little bit better. But yeah, Carol Kane,
if I remember correctly,
literally. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, first of all, he asked her to be rough to make it look real. Otherwise, it wouldn't be believable. So, well, she didn't really hit him in the
groin,
the gonads, but she was really rough with him upon his request. Upon his request.
There it is.
Yeah,
there's
there
the
it
injury. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody remembers the toaster. The toaster got a laugh in the trailer. The toaster gets a laugh today.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the movie kind of moves quickly through our real world sympathetic child trope, which we need to have in the story. We'll have to make sure that was in our script, Mephisto. You got to have a sympathetic child part for this, otherwise we can't complete our circle.
There's no if there's no moments of redemption, points of reference where, oh, I understand this. Oh, and I understand this. So the brother is one point. Then the girlfriend is another point, and another point is the child, where it's not his child, but it's a child of let's say a surrogate girlfriend, which is the secretary.
Right.
He doesn't really care about the secretary, but he cannot live without her. Kind of reminds me of a certain type of relationship with a woman or a significant other, whatever. It's like, I don't like her, but I can't live without her.
And the sympathetic child has to be like the ultimate of vulnerable child, like that usually they have like a handicap or they have an illness or something like that sets up what could happen in the future. So that's all part of that circle. That's very important. And I love it. And I love the fact that the brothers in both real life and in the movie are very good. And then we cut, of course, to the tragedy that starts to take place. He's very oblivious to this is a guy from the homeless shelter. Yeah. And it's like, this is actually happening. Like, you gotta, I love this because actually this happens a little bit earlier in this story. Not most Christmas carols have something this dark happen in the present phase. That doesn't always happen. And I think that's part of what makes this work, is because Frank is such a great embodiment of evil that they, like I said, we needed to have the evil version of Marley. We needed to have that really dark version of the warning ghost. We have to have a little bit of that dark edge here with the present ghost. So that's the only way it's going to work for Frank. It wouldn't be believable if Frank didn't have something quite so heavy to shove in his face.
Herman is the name of the guy, and played by Michael J. Pollard, who a year later was he played kind of the Q type character in Tango and Cash. And this is the first time I've seen it. I've seen Tango and Cash before Scrooged, and it was like, oh, that's the guy. And I think he has some sort of a joke about the watch and the time. I don't remember what, but he kind of discovers he's dead. Then he makes a joke. Then he leaves because he realizes, well, he died.
Yep.
Because when he makes the joke, he doesn't think he's alive. He doesn't think he's dead. And then he realizes, oh no, he's actually dead.
Right. Frank is then thrust into our world again. They're warming up Mary Lou Retton, who was a famous gymnast in the moment. The little boy is on set. Chaos is working through because Frank's really starting to lose it now.
And
Um,
there is sort of a half, it's not really a fourth wall break because they don't address the audience, but it's sort of we're telling a Scrooge story, but inside the Scrooge story, they're making a Scrooge story within the movie
Yes.
of Scrooge that we see, sort of like
very
trying
meta.
to revive the Dickens story, telling us, oh, look, this is a Dickens story too. But yeah. But before the future, he has that run-in with the disgruntled worker, Bobcat,
Yes.
which
Eliot attacks.
yeah, Eliot attacks, sort of a disgruntled postal worker attack, kind of attack.
Yep.
And he he weasels out of that. And when he kind of weasels out of that from Eliot, it's into the frying pan with the future.
And he
And
realizes
the
he's
future,
in the
like I
elevator.
said,
He's trapped in the elevator with. He thinks it's like a special effect.
yeah.
Right?
And when he opens up the thing, it's like all the tortured souls, and you're like, oh my god, is this, what is this? And then he goes to the mortuary where he basically meets all of his family and friends mourning over him and saying that uh, he died, but nobody wanted him, and there's nobody there in the funeral. Blah blah blah. It's just the ex-girlfriend and the brother, because just the brother only has a little bit of connection to him. And of course, as soon as the thing goes into the fire, he's being placed inside the coffin to suffer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's inside the coffin. Yeah. Yeah. It's literally like the ultimate horror of Frank's journey of how this is going to play out for you, Frank. You don't have long, and it's going to be bad. No one's going to care. No one's going to want to be around you. And of course, he wakes up, and you have this last little.
Yeah.
And what I love about this shot and this little sequence, especially with Eliot, who was there to shoot him, Frank seems insane. His hair's all wacky. He's sweaty. He seems like he's a complete delirious madman, not making any sense because he's such a opposite parallel to where he was just 5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that path to redemption starts with Eliot. And it kind of is a sort of full circle because you start the movie with that craziness and the suggestion of the explosions, and Eliot saying, well, maybe this is not the correct way. It's like, you're fired.
Yep.
And the path to redemption starts with Eliot as kind of Frank understands that it's not the way to go.
Eliot was right
Not
all
really
along.
the way to go.
I do also give Richard Donner a little bit of credit by having like on the nose moments for the audience of us getting to see, because we hear Buddy Hackett's name, but then we actually get to see Buddy Hackett briefly. He was a famous actor, and so we get little famous moments for everyone before Frank's like wild and crazy.
Yeah,
ranting, raving,
when he disrupts this, it's supposed to be like a live show. When he disrupts this, John Glover's character, is it Bryce or Bruce? Bryce tries to cut it off, but Eliot, having that reconciliation with Frank, he goes into the director's booth and he threatens everybody with the gun, especially Bryce.
He's wrapped up
like,
with like garland and ribbon and like this stuff wouldn't hold anyone. It's just so great.
Yeah,
it's just so great.
Yeah, it just serves those comedic moments because it is sort of a dark comedy. It's that, and that's why I said it's the Scrooge story. This time it's a dark comedy, and we'll handle it like a dark comedy would. where you have Bill Murray that can do sarcasm, that can do off the cuff stuff where he just starts singing, right? It's like it goes for Bill Murray. It can go off the rails and then back on the rails again. And Bobcat does a great job of him going crazy as well. And that kind of serves him in that director's booth to just, keep the action going and then focusing back on Frank and having him to have that redemption moment where he calls everybody and he says, we've lost something that I think I found today, right? That special thing that we need to remember that I forgot, but now I remember, and it kind of fuels his path to redemption.
And he's like, and you can have that too. And you can have that too. So it starts to hit everybody in the feels of, no matter where you are with your Christmas journey and how bad you are. And look at Bill Murray. Murray, again, this is that rant raving SNL. He's never really acted as good as he does in scenes like this, where he's just really just being Bill Murray. He's just totally embodied this character. He's got pieces of the script, I'm sure, and it just sort of like bubbles out into this like emotional explosion and expression of this character. And I don't know kind of where Frank Cross and Bill Murray begin and end in this sequence, and I don't think the creators did either. I think when they yelled cut, like I said before, everyone was like, I don't know if that was genius or a complete waste of our time, but holy cow, I couldn't look away. So,
it was and he sort of has moments from all the moments that he's been on throughout his ghost journey.
Yes.
Where he sort of had that reconciliation, not really reconciliation with his brother, his reconciliation with his secretary, ex-girlfriend. Everybody has a moment, right? To, let's say, to have Frank Cross be whole again as a human rather than being the wreck that he is. In terms of emotional or sort of his soul was in pieces because he was such a depraved and greedy individual. He needs to have his soul kind of put back together in order for him to be sort of a more healthy and happier individual, because he was really mean and money grabbing and a big curmudgeon.
And
He
cruel,
needs
right?
to have that.
And,
He needs to have humanity back.
And the child saying, God bless us, everyone kind of moment. Obviously, the girlfriend, the former girlfriend, shows up, and they have sort of like their moment right in front of everybody. And then you get a quick little moment with them seeing the ghosts, and they start singing, and that's how the movie kind of wraps with an actual little talk. The song and dance was a little shoehorned in there. The Put a Little Love in Your Heart, Annie Lennox song was sort of like this produced record and things like that. They were kind of having to put in there and stuff like that. But it sort of left you, when you left the theater, it kind of left you kind of tapping your foot. It felt okay. It wasn't, in hindsight, it's not quite my favorite thing. I prefer Let It Snow at the end of Die Hard, but that's, that's my love of Die Hard and showing through. But I love rewatching this movie for that reason. It's got so many of those elements like you were talking about a minute ago. It checks all the boxes. It dots the I's and crosses the T's for everything I need from the Dickens tale, and a nice sort of like redemption arc. It's a lot of fun.
I think when it comes to Richard Donner, he has a lot of heart put into his movies. You see that in the Superman movie. You see that even in Lethal Weapon. There are moments where you have really emotional touches to the story. Where, in just an example, if I'm diverting it to a different Christmas movie, but Lethal Weapon has the whole Riggs story where he lost his wife and he wants to die, but he doesn't want to die, but he puts his life on the line. So he maybe dies, but it will affect his partner or his former partners. So he has this sort of redemption arc. And in Scrooged, it's a more structured way, but the fact that you have somebody like Bill Murray that can do a little bit of comedy in this sort of a heavy subject matter
Right.
to break the monotony, but the comedy is it comes from a very weird and dark place where he, again, talking to a dead guy, making jokes, and then realizing, oh, you're actually dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of in he has that interaction with the homeless people until his ex-girlfriend can talk to him, and he has a little bit of banter with them, not really jokes, but little banter with them because he is so removed from that world, because he is high and mighty in his ivory tower. He
Yeah.
can't connect to them, not financially and not emotionally. He's not there, so he doesn't know how to work, so he's making jokes to deflect, to defer, to move. Uh and as we get to the end, he is less jokey in terms of dark jokes, and more, if he's telling a joke, is through kindness and love, rather than being mean. And that's kind of contributes. Like I said, it's a dark comedy rather than a Dickens tale, but it is a Dickens tale
Yeah.
through a dark comedy, where we took a little bit of an angle, smoke and mirrors. It's Dickens, but it's not Dickens, but it is. And we're telling you we found a way to tell you the same story again without boring you. And there's another Dickens story happening that you see only parts of, because it's a
Sure.
TV station producing a Dickens story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's got Donner pulled off what's really kind of an underrated film in the grand scheme. And this is another reason why I don't ever let it go. I watch it so regularly, is because when I watch it, like you said, you love the bickering and bantering with the ghosts. You love the demeaning elements that are early in the film, and then at the end, there's such a redemption for all of those moments. You love the fact that you have the absurdity with the ghost, particularly Carol Kane's character, and then ultimately Eliot, which leads him to the redemptive final chapter and act.
even
Yeah,
the
good
mentor,
stuff.
even John Forsythe's
John Forsythe's character, yeah, yeah,
character, it's all like, he's serious, but it's also presented in a more humoristic way. Like I said, when he's drinking and everything kind of spills over
right.
to
There's a comment about being a
him.
ladies' man. He's like, oh yeah, right, like you are a ladies' man. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
just enough of the levity that Bill Murray can pull off that keeps it a Christmas Carol's here, and then it keeps it sort of like in this relevancy that really has proven to be a lot more tried and true than we in the '80s probably expected. Because I know it hit us then, and I'm still enjoying it now. So I want to hear what people have to say about it. So I'm glad we had a chance to break this movie down. That's for sure. So you
Yeah,
rewatch
we
this
kind of
regularly or no?
yeah, we kind of skimmed it through, but yeah, the points that are important to make is what we said.
Yeah, you can dive deep into these movies and really get into the weeds and scenes and things like that. But I try to keep it around an hour to make something kind of digestible and
Okay.
focus on a few of these every year. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of, I don't think there really should be an end for us to having conversation. Like you said, you've done one of these on your channel before, and now I've got one of mine, and I hope that next year someone else will have one of theirs, and maybe you or I will be part of that conversation. You just kind of keep checking these boxes for this library of movies that folks need to have in their rotation, so we have a nice healthy diet, and then we can have new things that come in. And again, there will be someone behind, right? There'll be some 12-year-old kid who's never seen it. They finally see it, and they'll find, me, the old fart, and you several years behind me, going having our journeys documented. And I love that. I think it's great.
And we kind of touched upon that at the very beginning. I don't know if you were recording or not, and it really doesn't matter, but I will reiterate. One of the things that got me, I was, after I started this whole journey of getting into movies, like deeper into movies, and having the show that we have, is I was at a I was in a family dinner. It was a holiday. I don't remember which one. We've got so many. It's insane. Um, there was a 21-year-old at the table. He was a boyfriend of my niece, and I mentioned some movie. I don't remember which one it was. It could have been even Die Hard. And I said, "Well, in this movie, blah blah blah, Bruce Willis." And he's like, "I've never seen that movie." And I was
Hmm.
like, "You've never seen Die Hard?" And he's like, "No." It's like, "Okay." It's like, I'm not gonna. He's 21 years old. I guess okay. It's sort of a staple movie. And he's like, "Oh, wait, I think I've seen it." And he starts to describe the movie, but it's like Die Hard 5.
It's one of the
And I
terrible ones. Oh,
and I
yeah.
was like, "Hold the
Right.
phone." It I don't remember if he liked it or didn't like it. He just described it, and I was like, "Okay, do yourself a favor. It's a very readily available movie. You can probably get it on Netflix, and if not, just go online. You'll probably get a decent copy of it and watch it." And sort of that from that movie, that conversation kind of rolled over, and lots of these different movies came up. And he's like, "I've never seen this. I've never seen this. I've never seen
Recommendation,
that."
recommendation, recommendation. Your relationship starts to build as well, where he starts to trust your judgment. And when he's like, sees you again, it's like, oh man, you know what? I forgot to tell you, I saw Return of the King for the first time, and I had never really finished that trilogy. I just didn't get to it. Next thing I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is so good. So then I watched all three of them again. Bro, isn't that like one of the most rewarding elements of doing this? Is that we now, first off, you're on the other side of the world from me. That we two nerds can have this kindred spirit and we can share and have these kind of conversations documented. And like you said, you spoke to this individual, but hopefully we're speaking to new people,
And and
tomorrow.
and to be perfectly honest, and I try to convey every single time that I'm anywhere on my channel and different channels when we are talking about movies, if you're disillusioned with what's happening in modern writing or in modern movies or TV shows, understand there is a library of stuff that you can watch, and you don't have to go all the way to like the 60s, but you will find stuff from the 60s, not my era. I'm guessing it's not, definitely not your era, but it is there for us to consume. Yes, the technology is not necessarily there. Yes, when they drive the car, you can see it's a screen, but listen, if the story is good, the technology around it will not matter. Will not matter. We did a whole Hitchcock month, and one of the movies I love the most is Vertigo.
That's
Vertigo
tremendous.
is such a great movie, and it's not technologically based. It's a lot of camera work. It's suspense. It's not horror. It's a lot of suspense, and it's a lot of, oh gosh, what is this? I want to know more. What is, it's sort of a half detective story too. It's like, where is this all going? And yeah, those stories are there. Not everything from the 60s, not everything from the 50s. Um, Good example. Cool Hand Luke with
Mm,
Paul Newman
yes. You have
should be a
failure
good
here to
movie.
communicate.
Rewatched it. I don't like it. There's
Yeah,
moments in it I like,
sure.
but I don't like the whole movie as a piece. And that's, again, I don't knock anybody else enjoying the movie, but having rewatched it again after so many years, watched it when I was a kid, and all I remember is the egg part when he eats a
Mm,
lot of eggs.
right.
And that's a really cool moment in the movie. But other than that, I just couldn't reconnect with it. Let's just say
And
this.
and there are some movies that I don't think, and I talk about this sometimes, where I feel like it's a one time only, or it's a very few time digestible thing. It's not like a rewatchability where you get like a Die Hard movie where you feel like you can just watch it annually, if not multiple times a year, and never really gets old to you. Whereas other films are like, I watched it, I like it, I get it, it's great. but maybe it's a heavy topic, or maybe it's something I don't connect to, or it's something I'm not going to be in the mood to watch, things like that. But I couldn't agree more. Angry Canadian gave me this label mostly because of my comic book approach, which is very similar to this. It's like we got like 60 to 80 years of stuff to go through. So I feel like my role becomes more like a curator. Like, okay, well, what are you kind of interested in? What do you like? Let me give you a couple of, you know what I mean? You feel like that's kind of can be your role in all of this as well. And I'm glad that we hopefully have done that here today, where we have dusted off something. 35 years, man. I can't believe it's been 35 years. It really cuts me deep when I say it out loud. It really does.
You know what? Same year. And it's a movie that I have watched in the theater that I kind of dragged my dad into going. Again, because we were watching the Looney Tunes together, is Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
And we sat at a theater with wooden chairs, you know, the stuff that you have to go. And they were uncomfortable, and we were probably the only two in the theater because it was like an afternoon, not like a 7 o'clock. It's just like a 5 o'clock showing. We were basically the only ones there, me, my dad, and a bucket of popcorn. And one of the best experiences I had with watching a movie in the theater is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because it was
so different.
Yeah. I've seen a Mary Poppins, and it is live action and cartoons, but nothing like this. It is so unique. It is so special that you can never have that experience. However, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. And it's not necessarily with your own kids. It can be with a friend who is young, or a boyfriend of a cousin, or something like that, which is, you know them, and they're not 9 years old. They're 25 years old, and they've never seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because some movies just go by the wayside. Maybe they've heard about it, maybe, I don't know, but they haven't seen it. And then you sit down and watch it. It's like, where has this movie been all my life?
That's great. Awesome.
Right?
Well, folks, I tell you what, Lan, similar stuff like this, these kind of conversations are right there. So make sure you connect down below, subscribe, check out those videos. And I'm with him, man. From Sisu to Indiana Jones. It's like, let that pendulum swing, man. Find some stuff that's out there to talk about. So, but yeah, brother, thank you so much for doing this. Thanks for hanging out. Folks, make sure you're subscribed and checked out to his stuff. Feel free to give your
pops too.
Listen, if they're here, who knows what's happened? They may be like, gosh, how did I end up here? This algorithm thing, I got to figure out how to shut this thing off. But you know what? It's okay, because we've done our part. We talked about something we enjoyed and had some fun doing it. And I feel better for it. So, folks, thank you so much for being here. Be blessed. Have a great holiday. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. I am Pops.